For years, I believed that the life I wanted was something I had to chase. I chased it in the early mornings when I forced myself out of bed before sunrise, convinced that successful people were always awake before everyone else. I chased it in long work days, in carefully planned goals, in endless lists of things I needed to improve about myself. I chased it in every decision, every sacrifice, every not yet. I thought happiness was waiting for me somewhere in the future. When I earned more money, then I would feel secure. When I became more confident, then I would feel worthy. When everything finally came together, then I would be happy. That belief shaped almost every part of my life. From the outside, it looked like I was doing everything right. I worked hard, I stayed disciplined, I made practical decisions. I kept moving forward even when I was exhausted. People admired my determination. They said I was focused, responsible, ambitious. But what they didn't see was how tired I had become. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, the kind of tired that settles into your spirit. Every achievement gave me relief, but never peace. Every milestone felt smaller than I imagined it would. Instead of satisfaction, I felt pressure. The moment I reached one goal, another appeared in front of me. There was always another version of life I thought I needed to reach before I could finally relax. I told myself this was normal. I told myself everyone felt this way. I told myself that the discomfort was the price of building the future I wanted. And maybe part of that was true, but another part was fear. Fear that if I stopped pushing, everything would fall apart. Fear that if I slowed down, I would discover I wasn't actually happy. Fear that maybe I was climbing toward a destination I didn't even want. I ignored that fear for a long time. Then life changed in the smallest way. Not with some dramatic event, not with a breakthrough or a tragedy. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, staring at my computer, trying to finish one more task before the end of the day. My mind was racing through everything I still needed to do that week. My body was tense. My jaw hurt from clenching it without noticing. I remember glancing out the window. The sunlight was soft, almost golden, spilling over the street outside. People were walking slowly. A woman was laughing with someone beside her. A man was carrying flowers. A child was jumping over cracks in the sidewalk as if it were the most important mission in the world. And suddenly, I noticed something uncomfortable. Life was happening outside of my plans. While I was trying to build the perfect future, moments of real life were passing by unnoticed. Not because I was doing something meaningful in that moment, not because I was saving the world, but because I had convinced myself that the present moment mattered less than the future. That realization hit me harder than I expected. I had spent years treating my current life like a waiting room. Everything was temporary, everything was preparation, everything was until. I'll rest when, I'll enjoy life when, I'll be happy when. But when kept moving, the future kept moving, and I kept postponing my life. I sat there, staring out the window, realizing that if nothing changed, I might spend the next 10 years doing the same thing, chasing a life I was too busy to live. That was the unexpected change. Not a new job, not a move, not a relationship, a new question. Instead of asking, how do I build the life I want someday, I started asking, what would make today feel like a life I want? At first, that question seemed almost irresponsible. I was so used to thinking in terms of productivity and outcomes that I didn't know how to answer it. What would make today feel meaningful? Not successful, not impressive, meaningful. The answer was surprisingly simple. I wanted mornings that didn't begin with anxiety. I wanted work that left room for breathing. I wanted conversations where I was fully present. I wanted evenings that didn't feel like recovery from survival. None of those desires were about status. None were about achievement. They were about the experience of being alive. That realization changed the way I made decisions. I stopped asking whether every opportunity moved me ahead. I started asking whether it moved me closer to the way I wanted to live. Some things changed quickly. I stopped filling every empty space in my schedule. I stopped saying yes to things that only made my life look better on paper. I stopped treating rest like something I had to earn. Other changes were harder. I had to admit that some of the goals I was pursuing were not actually mine. Some came from fear, some came from comparison, some came from wanting approval. Letting go of those goals felt terrifying. For a while, it looked like I was losing progress. I became less busy, less productive, less impressive. But internally, something new was growing: space. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without the noise of constant striving. And in that space, I began to understand what I actually wanted. I wanted freedom more than recognition, peace more than performance, presence more than perfection. Those truths sound simple now, but living them required courage. Because when you stop living according to the expectations that shaped you, you face an uncomfortable question. If I am not constantly proving myself, who am I? For a while, I didn't know. But slowly the answer emerged. I was someone who loved slow mornings, someone who valued deep conversations over endless networking, someone who preferred meaningful work over impressive titles, someone who wanted a calm life, not a glamorous one. It felt almost strange to admit those things. For years, I believed the right life had to look ambitious from the outside. Now I was choosing a life that felt right on the inside. That shift changed everything.
My days became less crowded, but more fulfilling. I was doing fewer things, but I cared about them more. I felt less adrenaline, but more peace. The irony was that the more I stopped chasing the image of the life I wanted, the more I actually began living it. The life I wanted had never been hiding behind some future achievement. It had been hidden beneath my assumptions. I assumed success would bring peace. I assumed more effort would create happiness. I assumed the future mattered more than the present. Once those assumptions changed, my life changed. Not instantly, but steadily. I became more intentional with my time. I paid attention to what drained me and what nourished me. I stopped organizing my life around external validation. And the result was something I had been chasing for years: contentment. Not constant joy, not perfection, but a grounded sense that my life belonged to me. That feeling was worth more than any milestone. The most surprising part was that externally, my life did not become dramatically bigger. It became quieter, simpler, but internally it became richer. I noticed beauty more often. I laughed more easily. I felt gratitude in ordinary moments: a walk in the evening, coffee in silence, a conversation without rushing. These moments used to feel insignificant. Now they felt like life itself. I realized I had spent years sacrificing everyday joy for the promise of future happiness. But everyday joy was the happiness. That understanding changed the direction of my life. I made career decisions differently. I protected my time differently. I valued relationships differently. I defined success differently. Before, success meant reaching goals. Now, success means creating a life I do not need to escape from. That one unexpected change, changing the question I asked myself, gave me everything I had been searching for. Not because it solved every problem. I still face uncertainty. I still struggle with doubt. I still sometimes fall back into old patterns of striving. But now I notice it, and I return. I return to the question, what would make today feel like a life I want? Sometimes the answer is progress. Sometimes the answer is rest. Sometimes the answer is honesty. Sometimes the answer is letting go. But that question keeps me rooted in the life I am living now, not the one I imagine someday. And because of that, I no longer feel like my real life is waiting in the future. It is here, in the choices I make, in the pace I choose, in the values I protect. Looking back, I understand that the life I wanted was never about having more. It was about wanting differently. I wanted meaning instead of approval, peace instead of pressure, presence instead of postponement. That was the unexpected change, small enough to sound almost insignificant, powerful enough to transform everything. People often think life changes through big, dramatic moments. Sometimes it does. But sometimes life changes because one belief quietly falls apart. Mine was the belief that happiness lived in the future. The day I stopped believing that was the day my life began to feel like my own. And that's what gave me the life I wanted. Not more success, not more control, not a perfect plan. Just the willingness to stop postponing joy. That one unexpected change gave me something I had been searching for in every goal, every plan, every achievement. The permission to live now. And once I had that, I realized something extraordinary. The life I wanted had been here all along. I just had to stop chasing it long enough to see it.